Ben had been a dedicated zookeeper for years, building a strong bond with the animals in his care. Among them, the newborn seal pup held a special place in his heart. Its playful nature and curiosity made it the highlight of Ben's days. But one morning, something felt wrong. The seal pup, usually energetic and lively, appeared unusually distressed. It avoided contact, made strange noises, and even seemed to shed tears. Alarmed, Ben quickly reported the behavior to his supervisor. Something must have happened in the enclosure yesterday, he explained. Ben had been off duty the previous day, and the seals had been under the care of his colleagues. To uncover the cause, he suggested reviewing the CCTV footage. "We need to know what's going on with the pup," he insisted. Though hesitant, his boss eventually agreed to check the footage, asking Ben to return to work while he reviewed it. Ben spent the rest of the day anxiously waiting for an update. The thought of the distressed seal consumed him, but his duties continued. During the midday feeding show, he guided the seals through their tricks as the crowd cheered, but his heart wasn't in it. All he could think about was the pup and what the footage might reveal. Unable to wait any longer, Ben approached his boss's office after the show. His boss looked uneasy as he opened the door. "Ah, Ben, I've been wanting to speak with you," he said, his tone heavy. "Did you check the footage?" Ben asked hopefully. "Yes," his boss replied, avoiding Ben's gaze. "I'm sorry, but I have to let you go." Ben froze. "What? Why?" he demanded. "You have until the end of the day to pack your things," his boss said flatly. The words felt like a punch to the gut. Fired? For what? He had only been trying to protect the animals. "I'm not leaving until you explain," Ben said, his voice steady despite his shock. But his boss wouldn't elaborate, simply repeating that Ben needed to leave. Defeated, Ben packed up his locker under the watchful eye of a security guard. "Tell him he's making a mistake," Ben muttered as he handed over his uniform. The guard nodded sympathetically but said nothing. Walking out of the zoo, Ben glanced back at the seal enclosure, his heart heavy. Something wasn't right, and he wasn't going to let it end like this. That night, Ben couldn't stop replaying the events in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more certain he became that someone was hiding something. The footage must have revealed something significant, something his boss didn't want getting out. Determined to uncover the truth, Ben formulated a plan. He would find a way to see the footage himself. The next morning, Ben returned to the zoo, hoping to slip in unnoticed. But his key card had already been deactivated. Just as he was weighing his options, Chloe, a trusted colleague, approached him. "Ben, what are you doing here?" she asked, her concern evident. "I forgot some personal items," Ben said, masking his real intentions. Chloe, trusting him, let him in. Once inside, Ben slipped away, hiding until his boss was in a meeting. Seizing the moment, he entered the office and began searching. It didn't take long to find the file. March. Classified CCTV footage, seal enclosure. As Ben played the footage, his heart sank. It showed his boss mistreating the baby seal, kicking its food away, throwing its toys out of reach, and deliberately agitating it. The distress on the pup's face was undeniable. This was the reason for its behavior and why Ben was fired. His boss was covering his tracks. Ben downloaded the footage onto a flash drive and shared it with Chloe. Horrified by what she saw, Chloe vowed to help. Together, they sent the evidence to their colleagues, ensuring the truth couldn't be buried. The fallout was swift. Faced with undeniable evidence, the boss resigned, and Ben was reinstated. His return was met with cheers from his colleagues and joy from the baby seal, whose playful spirit seemed to return. Justice was served, and the zoo began a new chapter, one focused on care, accountability, and hope for the future. Determined to uncover the truth, Ben waited until his boss was occupied in a meeting. Seizing the opportunity, he snuck into the office to review the footage himself. His hands trembled as he hit play, the screen showing the interior of the seal pup's enclosure. At first, it seemed ordinary, but then the footage revealed something that made Ben's stomach drop. His eyes widened in disbelief as the horrifying truth played out before him. This had to stop, and Ben knew he was the only one who could do it. Whatever was happening, it wasn't just about the seal. It was about something much bigger. But why had his boss fired him so abruptly? What exactly had been captured on the footage? And most importantly, what was happening to the baby seal? The local zoo was a favorite destination for families, a place filled with laughter and wonder. But no attraction was more beloved than the seals. Every day at noon, zookeepers would put on a lively feeding show, showcasing the seals' impressive jumps and playful waves, much to the delight of children sitting in the front row. Ben was the heart of it all, the show master who had trained the seals to perform most of their tricks. Over the years, he had built an unshakable bond with them. The seals trusted Ben completely, and he cared for them like family. One Wednesday morning, as Ben prepared for the midday show, something seemed off. The youngest baby seal was acting unusually distressed, and to his shock, he noticed real tears rolling down its cheek. Concerned, Ben immediately sought out his colleague Flo, who had been responsible for the seals the day before. Flo admitted she had noticed the same behavior during her shift but had no explanation for it. Something must have happened on Tuesday while Ben wasn't working. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Ben knew he had to act. Whoever was responsible wasn't likely to confess, so the only way to uncover the truth was by reviewing the CCTV footage. There was one problem. Zoo employees weren't allowed to access the footage without authorization. Ben approached his boss, explaining the urgency of the situation. He stressed not only his personal concern for the seal's well-being but also the zoo's reputation, pointing out how losing a seal could upset visitors and hurt business. Reluctantly, his boss agreed to review the footage but insisted Ben couldn't be present. Left with no choice, Ben returned to work and spent the rest of the day anxiously waiting for answers. Despite his unease, Ben managed to pull off another fantastic feeding show. The seals clapped their flippers, performed flawless jumps, and delighted the crowd. The visitors cheered, but Ben's mind kept drifting back to the sad baby seal. By the end of the day, his patience had worn thin. Surely, his boss had seen the footage by now. Ben decided to confront him directly and knocked on the office door. When his boss opened it, his expression was uneasy. "Ah, Ben, I've been wanting to speak with you," he said, hesitating. "Did you check the footage?" Ben asked, his hope flickering. "Yes," his boss began, but his tone was heavy. "I'm sorry, Ben, but I have to let you go." Ben froze, his breath catching in his throat. "What do you mean?" he asked, stunned. "You have until tomorrow to gather your things," his boss said, avoiding Ben's gaze. The words hit Ben like a blow to the stomach. Fired? For what? His love for the animals, his dedication to the seals, none of it made sense. "I'm not going anywhere until you explain," Ben said firmly, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside. Caught off guard, his boss faltered. "Ben, you need to leave now," he said, a trace of regret in his voice. But Ben wasn't budging. This wasn't just about a job. It was about protecting the animals he loved, and he wasn't going to let it end like this. "Why am I being fired?" Ben demanded, his voice shaking with frustration. His boss refused to meet his gaze, staring at the desk instead. "I can't discuss it, Ben," he muttered, his tone flat. Ben's heart sank as his boss reached for the phone. Moments later, a security guard appeared at the door, his expression a mix of surprise and discomfort upon seeing who he was there to escort. "Then, let's go," the guard said, his voice calm but firm. Ben looked back at his boss one last time, hoping for an explanation, a change of heart, but there was nothing. With a resigned sigh, Ben began clearing out his locker, the guard standing silently nearby. "Tell him he's making a big mistake," Ben said as he handed over his Zookeeper uniform. The guard nodded sympathetically, understanding the weight of the moment but powerless to intervene. As Ben walked out of the zoo gates, he glanced back at the enclosures, the animals he had devoted years of his life to caring for. His sadness quickly gave way to resolve. This wasn't over. He was determined to uncover the truth and prove his innocence. That night, sitting on his couch, Ben racked his brain, piecing together a plan. If he couldn't work within the system, he'd work around it. He would catch whatever, or whoever, was causing the baby seal's distress on camera. By dawn, Ben was already back at the zoo, his heart racing as he approached the entrance. Keeping a low profile, he waited until his boss was out of sight before swiping his key card at the gate. A red light blinked back at him. Access denied. The rejection stung, but Ben wasn't ready to give up. He needed another way in. "Ben, what are you doing here?" Flo's voice startled him. She looked at him with concern, her forehead creased with worry. Ben scrambled for a believable excuse. "I just forgot some stuff at my desk," he said, trying to sound nonchalant. Flo hesitated but finally nodded. "All right, I'll let you in." She swiped her card, granting him access, and waited for him to lead the way. Ben knew he had to think quickly. He couldn't let her see what he was really up to. "Actually, I need to hit the bathroom first," he said, glancing nervously down the hall. Flo shrugged, stepping aside. Before she could offer to wait, Ben darted toward the restroom and locked himself in a stall. He needed time to figure out his next move. His boss had a standing meeting at 10, and if Ben could stay hidden until then, he'd have the chance to move around undetected. Ben checked his watch anxiously, counting down the minutes. The muffled sounds of the zoo filtered through the walls as he waited, his nerves mounting with every tick of the clock. Finally, at 10 o'clock, the sounds grew faint, a sign that most staff were heading to the meeting. Peeking out of the bathroom, Ben saw the coast was clear. He moved quickly, making his way to his boss's office. His heart pounded as he reached the door, but when he tried the handle, it wouldn't budge. The door was locked. Standing there, out of options, Ben felt a wave of panic. He hadn't planned for this. With his mission hanging in the balance, he knew he had to improvise, and fast. As Ben deliberated his next move, the sound of his boss's voice echoed down the hallway. Reacting quickly, Ben hid behind a filing cabinet. Moments later, his boss entered the office, grabbed some documents, and rushed out, leaving the door unlocked in his haste. Taking advantage of the rare opportunity, Ben slipped inside and began searching for answers. His heart raced as he discovered a video labeled "March, classified CCTV footage, seal enclosure." Watching it, Ben's eyes widened in disbelief as the footage revealed the boss's mistreatment of the baby seal. Determined to expose the truth, Ben shared his findings with Flo, who agreed to help. Flo sent the incriminating footage and an audio recording of their boss's plans to silence Ben to their colleagues, excluding the boss. The revelation sent shockwaves through the zoo, uniting staff in outrage. When Flo confronted the boss with the evidence, his cruelty was undeniable. She demanded justice. The footage would be deleted, Ben would be rehired, and the boss would resign immediately. Left with no choice, he accepted. By the end of the week, the staff celebrated his departure and the beginning of a new chapter for the zoo. Ben returned to the zoo, welcomed warmly by his colleagues. The baby seal, visibly happier in his presence, frolicked and played once more. A new boss with a focus on care and inclusivity took over, bringing a wave of positive change. Under her leadership, the zoo thrived, ensuring a brighter future for its animals, staff, and visitors alike.